Hi everyone, welcome to our video, and it is our What Is It Wednesday series. Today we're starting with sensory processing disorder, and we're going to be chatting about what it is and what happens when someone has it and how to help them. If you're new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell to get even more notifications for new videos. So before we discuss what sensory processing disorder is, we need to go back to the basics. What are the senses? And we also need to know how our brain actually processes that information. So what are the senses? I know that sounds silly to discuss senses when we already know what the senses are, but there's much more to the senses than you probably know. We know that our body has 5 basic senses and that they have technical terms for each, such as auditory for hearing, tactile for touch, olfactory for smell, gustatory for taste, and visual for sight. But did you know that there are other senses? These 3 senses are also affected by sensory processing disorder. First of all, we have kinesthetic, which is a sense of your moving muscles, bones in your body. And secondly, we have the vestibular sense, that is a sense of the balance. And finally, we have the proprioceptive sense, which tells us where our body is in space. When discussing the senses that are affected by sensory processing disorder, we have to take all 8 of these senses into account. How does our body process all of that information? The body collects information through all of our sensory organs, and then that information goes through the nerves and to our brain. Once in the brain, the information is organized and an appropriate response is given. This can happen in seconds and we don't even realize it. But for people with sensory processing disorder, they sure do realize it. That is because those with sensory processing disorder struggle with organizing that information in their brains. Someone with sensory processing disorder might react to sounds differently depending on their brain. Loud or unexpected sounds like fire alarms, blenders, singing, or anything out in public like going to the store, it might upset them or overwhelm them. You might also hear them doing repetitive or specific types of noises like finger snapping or clapping, and that relaxes them. Smell can affect someone with sensory processing disorder because specific smells may trigger them. Some kids might like to smell everything that they see, and others might have a stronger sense of smell and detect some smells that most people don't notice. When talking about taste and sensory processing disorder, I usually think about avoiders. A lot of times specific tastes like spicy or sour or bitter, they seem to be overwhelming for people with SPD. So they try to stick with some things that they know will taste okay for them. In addition to textures like crunchy or chewy or mushy might also be overwhelming. When we're talking about touch with sensory processing disorder, we can talk about a couple different things. One could be touching other people. Some want a lot of touch. They want to be hugged or squeezed or have that input from a sensory blanket. Or they don't want to be touched. Some clothing may hurt them. It might feel too rough. It might feel too tight. Sight may affect someone with SPD because some crave visual patterns, certain colors, moving, spinning objects like spinning lights, and some may be overwhelmed with the bright objects or light and try to cover their eyes with sunglasses or hide under a cover. When talking about sensory processing disorder today, I'm going to be referring to 2 different kinds or intensities of sensory processing disorder. First of all, we have our sensory seekers. Those are the ones that look for that extra input because their body is under-responding to the senses. They don't react to the sensory stimuli as much as others. Then we have the sensory avoiders. Those are the ones who are over-responsive with their sensory responses. They seem much more intense than others. How do you know it's a sensory overload? The child may be more active or more sensitive, become distracted, disoriented, or confused, nauseous, pale, flushed, sweaty, or clammy, rapid breathing or slow or shallow breathing, glazed over look, or angry outbursts. In addition, they may be drowsy, fatigued, sleepy, shut down or refuse to participate, make poor eye contact, cover eyes around lights, cover ears to avoid loud sounds, avoid being touched or hugged, constantly changing a task, or fidgeting and being restless. Little Joe is describing a meltdown. Basically, when sensory information gets jumbled in his brain, he feels different, and his body goes in a fight or flight response, thinking it's an emergency, which as a result, self-regulation of emotions is difficult, and it's very important to stop it before it gets into a meltdown. If a sensory overload happens, the first thing you need to do is learn your child's signs that they're going to be in sensory overload. Then, take a look at your child's triggers, what caused them to be in overload. And finally, come up with a plan to help lower the effect of the triggers or to avoid them completely. You could do that by checking out the sensory corner for more information, looking at bouncing balls, sensory play, weighted items, crash pads, sensory bottles, noise-canceling headphones, sensory socks, or sensory swings. And as always, if you suspect your child has SPD, talk to your pediatrician. If you found this video helpful, please like our video. We would love for you to become part of our family, so hit that subscribe button and that bell for notifications of new videos.